The first signs appeared in the night sky over the Pacific Ocean. Bright streaks of light cut through the darkness, different from any meteor shower humanity had ever witnessed. These lights moved with purpose, changing direction and speed as they descended toward Earth's surface. Amateur astronomers around the world pointed their telescopes upward, capturing images of objects that defied explanation. The Kethmori fleet broke through Earth's atmosphere with barely a whisper. Their ships were unlike anything humans could. Imagine living vessels that pulsed with soft blue and green light, their hulls seeming to breathe like massive sea creatures. Each warship stretched over 2 miles in length, their organic surfaces covered in what looked like scales that shifted and moved in the cosmic winds. Commander Velanash stood in the bridge of his flagship, the Depth Caller. His tall, slender form was perfectly adapted for underwater life. His skin had a pale blue tint that darkened near his gills, and his large black eyes could see clearly in the deepest ocean darkness. Like all Kethmori, he had spent his entire life in the crushing depths of his homeworld's endless seas. Through the ship's living sensors, Velanash studied the blue and green planet before him. Earth's continents appeared small and scattered compared to the vast oceans that covered most of the world. The alien commander felt a surge of satisfaction as he recognized the perfect conditions for his people's expansion. Report on the surface, dwellers. Velanash commanded his science officer, Subcommander Kratha. Kratha's webbed fingers danced over the biomechanical controls. The ship's sensors had been monitoring Earth's radio and television signals for days during their approach. They are a primitive species, Commander. They build crude structures on the land masses and float simple vessels on the ocean's surface. Their technology appears to be based on metal and electricity rather than living systems. Velanash studied the images of human cities, airports, and harbors that appeared on the organic viewing screen. To his eyes, these looked like crude scratches on the land, hardly worthy of concern. The humans seemed to avoid the deep ocean entirely, staying close to shore like frightened creatures, afraid of the true depths. Do they have any underwater presence? He asked. Minimal, Commander. They send down small metal containers occasionally, but never to the deep places. They seem to fear the pressure and darkness that we call home. The alien commander's satisfaction grew. His people had searched the galaxy for decades, looking for a world that could support their vast underwater civilization. Most planets were either too dry or had oceans too shallow for proper development. Earth was perfect. Not only did it have incredibly deep oceans, but the native species appeared to have no interest in claiming them. Begin the descent, Velanash ordered. Take us to the deepest trenches. We will establish our first cities, where these primitive creatures cannot even imagine to look. The Kethmori fleet dove toward Earth's oceans like a school of massive predators returning home. Their bioluminescent hulls began to pulse faster as they sensed the water below. Each ship was designed to operate equally well in space or in the crushing depths of alien seas. As they hit the ocean surface, the vessels seemed to come alive, their hulls adjusting to the water pressure and their propulsion systems shifting from stellar drives to underwater propulsion. The first ships reached the Mariana Trench within hours, at depths where the pressure would crush any human vessel instantly. The Kethmori felt perfectly comfortable. Their technology was based on living organisms that had evolved in similar conditions on their homeworld, where humans used metal and circuits. The aliens used specially bred creatures and organic systems that thrived under extreme pressure. Velanash watched with pride as his construction ships began their work. Massive biomechanical seeds were planted on the ocean floor, each one designed to grow into a fully functional city. The seeds absorbed minerals from the seawater and the ocean floor, using them to build towering structures that looked like coral reefs but functioned as advanced technological centers. Within the first day, the basic framework of New Keth began to rise from the trench floor. Organic towers stretched upward through the water, their walls alive with bioluminescent patterns that served as both decoration and communication systems. Living tubes connected the buildings, allowing the aliens to swim rapidly between different sections of their growing city. The construction was unlike anything that existed on Earth. Instead of building with dead materials like concrete and steel, the Kethmori grew their cities from specially designed organisms. The buildings could repair themselves, adapt to changing conditions, and even reproduce to create new sections when needed. What would take human engineers years to plan and build, the alien biotechnology accomplished in days. As the city grew, Velanash deployed his security forces throughout the surrounding ocean. These were not mechanical robots, but living creatures bred specifically for warfare and patrol duties. Some looked like enormous jellyfish, with electronic implants that allowed them to detect any foreign presence in the water. Others resembled giant squid with enhanced intelligence and weapons grafted onto their tentacles. The patrol creatures spread out through the deep ocean, establishing a perimeter around the growing alien settlement. Their orders were simple: monitor the deep waters and eliminate any threats to the construction project. However, since humans rarely ventured into the deep ocean, the creatures found themselves with little to do except swim lazy circles through. The dark water mining operations began immediately. The ocean floor around the Mariana Trench contained vast deposits of rare minerals that were essential for Kethmori technology. Specialized harvesting creatures, looking like combinations of sea worms and mining equipment, began extracting these materials and transporting them to processing centers within the city. Velanash established his command center in the highest tower of New Kethmer, over 7 miles below the ocean surface. From his organic chair, he could monitor the progress of construction projects around the globe. Similar cities were rising in the Puerto Rico Trench, the Japan Trench, and dozens of other deep ocean locations. Each site had been carefully chosen for its depth, mineral content, and distance from human activity. The alien commander felt confident about his people's expansion. The surface dwellers showed no interest in the deep ocean and no capability of reaching these depths, even if they wanted to. Their primitive submarines occasionally visited the upper levels of the ocean, but they had never detected the alien presence in the true depths below. Let the surface dwellers keep their land, Velanash told his officers as he watched human ships pass far overhead, completely unaware of the vast alien civilization growing beneath them. They can have their continents and their shallow seas. We will claim the 70% of this world that truly matters, the deep ocean that they fear to explore. The Kethmori had made what they believed was a perfect conquest, taking control of Earth's vast underwater realm without firing a single shot. They had no way of knowing that their dismissal of humanity's ocean capabilities would prove to be their greatest mistake. Dr. Lisa Morgan checked her equipment one final time as the research submarine Deep Explorer prepared for its descent into the Puerto Rico Trench. She had been studying deep sea life for 15 years, and this dive was supposed to be routine. The marine biologist was investigating reports of unusual algae blooms in the deepest parts of the trench, something that should not exist at such depths where sunlight never reached. The submarine's crew consisted of only 3 people. Commander Tom Bradley served as both pilot and mission commander. His assistant pilot was Lieutenant Jake Wilson, a young officer fresh from submarine school. Dr. Morgan represented the scientific mission, carrying specialized equipment to collect samples from the ocean floor. As they descended past the 2-mile mark, Dr. Morgan noticed something strange on her sonar display. The readings showed large objects on the ocean floor that appeared to have geometric shapes. Natural formations in deep ocean trenches were usually irregular, created by underwater earthquakes and volcanic activity. These shapes looked too organized, too planned. "Tom, can you take a look at this sonar data?" she called from her station behind the pilot seats. Commander Bradley had spent 2 decades operating submarines for the Navy. before joining the research division. His experience included missions in every major ocean, from the Arctic ice to the tropical Pacific. He understood sonar readings better than most people understood road maps. When he looked at Dr. Morgan's display, his face immediately showed concern. "Jake, bring us to a hover," Bradley ordered his co-pilot. "Something's not right down there." The sonar showed massive structures covering several square miles of the trench floor. The objects appeared to be arranged in patterns that suggested intelligent design. Some were tall and narrow like towers, while others spread horizontally like vast platforms. Most disturbing of all, the structures seemed to be glowing with their own light. Could it be some kind of underwater volcano? Lieutenant Wilson asked, studying the readings over Bradley's shoulder. "Volcanoes don't build geometric patterns," Bradley replied grimly, "and they don't pulse with regular light patterns like those things are doing." Dr. Morgan felt her heart racing as she realized the implications. In all her years of deep-sea research, she had never seen anything like this. The structures were clearly artificial, but no human technology existed that could build cities at these depths. The pressure at the bottom of the Puerto Rico Trench was over 800 times greater than atmospheric pressure at sea level. "We need to get closer," she said, though her voice betrayed her nervousness. "If these are artificial structures, this could be the most important discovery in human history." Bradley hesitated. His military training told him to be cautious when encountering unknown situations. But his scientific curiosity, developed through years of deep-sea exploration, wanted to investigate further. After a moment of consideration, he made his decision. "We'll approach slowly and stay ready to surface immediately if anything seems dangerous," he announced. "Jake, take us down another 1,000 feet, but keep the engines warm." As the *Deep Explorer* descended deeper into the trench, the mysterious structures became clearer on their visual displays. The submarine's powerful lights revealed buildings that looked like a combination of coral reefs and futuristic architecture. The walls seemed to be alive, with surfaces that moved and shifted like living tissue. Bioluminescent patterns flowed across the structures in waves of blue and green light. "This is impossible," whispered Lieutenant Wilson. "Who could have built this?" Dr. Morgan was recording everything with her scientific instruments, but her hands were shaking with excitement and fear. The structures were clearly inhabited. She could see movement within the transparent sections of the buildings, and creatures were swimming between the towers in organized patterns that suggested intelligence and purpose. Suddenly, their passive sonar detected multiple contacts, approaching from different directions. The objects were moving fast and appeared to be converging on their location. Bradley immediately recognized the signature of hostile contact. "We've got company," he announced, his voice sharp with alarm. Multiple contacts, closing fast from all directions. Through the submarine's viewing ports, they could see bioluminescent forms approaching through the water. These were not natural sea creatures. They moved with mechanical precision and carried what appeared to be weapons or sensors. Some looked like massive jellyfish with metallic implants, while others resembled squid with artificial enhancements grafted onto their bodies. The alien patrol creatures had detected the human submarine and were responding according to their programming. They surrounded the Deep Explorer in a formation that clearly indicated hostile intent. Strange lights began flashing between the creatures, apparently some form of communication. "Emergency surface protocol," Bradley shouted, engaging the submarine's maximum power. "Jake, blow all ballast tanks now." The Deep Explorer shot upward through the water as Bradley pushed the engines beyond their recommended limits. Behind them, the alien creatures gave chase, their bioluminescent forms clearly visible as they pursued the fleeing submarine. Some of the creatures were faster than others, and the closest ones were gaining on the human vessel. Dr. Morgan watched in terror as energy discharges began flashing past their hull. The alien weapons created brief explosions in the water around them. each blast shaking the submarine violently. She realized that these creatures were not trying to communicate, they were trying to destroy the human intruders. Lieutenant Wilson monitored their ascent rate, while Bradley focused on evasive maneuvers. The submarine twisted and turned through the water, using every trick that Bradley had learned during his military career. The alien pursuit craft were fast, but they seemed less maneuverable than the human vessel, as they rose through the thermal layers of the ocean. Some of the pursuing creatures began to fall behind. It appeared that the aliens were designed for deep water operations and lost effectiveness as they approached the surface. The Deep Explorer broke through the waves after the fastest ascent in Bradley's career, their hull groaning from the rapid pressure change. Once on the surface, Bradley immediately activated their emergency communication system. Within minutes, he was speaking directly to Admiral Kate Sullivan at the Atlantic Fleet Command Center in Norfolk, Virginia. The Admiral had known Bradley for years and trusted his judgment completely. "Admiral, this is Commander Bradley aboard the research vessel. Deep Explorer," he reported. "We have encountered what appears to be an alien civilization in the Puerto Rico Trench. They have established underwater cities and responded to our presence with hostile action." Admiral Sullivan stared at the sonar recordings that were being transmitted from the submarine. Her military experience included conflicts around the world, but nothing had prepared her for this possibility. The evidence was undeniable. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and the newcomers had chosen Earth's oceans as their home. "Commander, return to base immediately," she ordered. "Tell no one about this discovery until you reach secure facilities. We need to determine how to respond to this situation." The implications were staggering. An alien force had established bases in Earth's deepest waters without humanity ever detecting them. The morning sun had just started to rise over the Pacific Ocean when the first signs of attack appeared. Seismic monitoring stations around the world began recording unusual underwater activity. The readings showed massive displacement of water, starting from the deepest ocean trenches, but these were not natural earthquakes. The patterns were too organized, too coordinated, to be anything except deliberate action. Admiral Jack Morrison was drinking his morning coffee at the Presidio military base in San Francisco when his communications officer burst into his office. Lieutenant Rebecca Hayes looked pale and frightened as she handed him the emergency reports. Flooding in from coastal monitoring stations. "Sir, we're getting reports of massive wave formations approaching every major coastal city simultaneously," she reported breathlessly. "These aren't normal tsunamis. The waves are moving in perfect formation and changing direction as they approach." "Sure." Morrison dropped his coffee mug and rushed to the command center. The main display screen showed satellite images of enormous waves approaching coastlines around the globe. Each wave was over 200 feet tall and moving at impossible speeds. More disturbing was their behavior. The waves were actively steering around natural obstacles and targeting population centers with precision that could only indicate intelligent control. "This is coordinated," Morrison muttered, studying the patterns. "Someone is controlling these waves." The first wave hit the Golden Gate Bridge at exactly 6:47 a.m. Pacific time. The massive wall of water swept over the famous landmark and continued into San Francisco Bay with devastating force. But instead of dissipating after impact like natural tsunamis, the wave maintained its shape and power as it moved inland, destroying everything in its path with surgical precision. Morrison watched in horror from his elevated position as the water swept through the financial district. Buildings that had survived earthquakes for decades crumbled like sandcastles before the alien-controlled tsunami. The waves seemed to target critical infrastructure, power plants, communication centers, and military installations, while leaving less important areas relatively untouched. "All units, this is Admiral Morrison," he broadcast on the emergency frequency. "We are under attack by unknown forces. All naval vessels, move to intercept and identify the source of these waves." The USS Nimitz and her escort ships were already moving toward the Golden Gate when the real horror began. Massive forms started rising from the deep water of the bay, breaking the surface with sounds like thunder. The creatures that emerged defied description. They looked like living buildings covered in organic armor, with multiple limbs that moved with mechanical precision. The largest creature stood over 300 feet tall, its body resembling a cross between a jellyfish and a skyscraper. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed across its surface in what appeared to be communication signals. Smaller creatures surrounded it, each one the size of a city bus and armed with weapons that glowed with alien energy. "Open fire, all weapons," Morrison ordered over the radio. The Navy ships unleashed everything they had: 5-inch guns, missile launchers, and close-in weapon systems, all focused their fire on the massive creatures. The shells and missiles struck the alien beings, creating explosions that lit up the morning sky. But when the smoke cleared, the creatures showed barely any damage. Their organic armor seemed to absorb or deflect most of the conventional weapons. The aliens responded with weapons of their own. Energy beams lanced out from the creatures, striking the Navy ships with devastating accuracy. The beam weapons cut through steel hulls like hot knives through butter, leaving smoking holes in the vessels. Within minutes, 2 destroyers were sinking and the aircraft carrier was retreating with serious damage. "Fall back to defensive positions," Morrison shouted into his radio. "All ships maintain distance and avoid direct engagement." Similar scenes were playing out in harbors around the world. In New York Harbor, massive alien creatures emerged from the Hudson River and began systematically destroying the port facilities. In Tokyo Bay, bioluminescent monsters the size of office buildings attacked the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force with energy weapons that melted through their ships' armor. The reports flooding into military command centers painted a grim picture. Humanity's surface navies, which had dominated the oceans for centuries, were completely outmatched by these alien forces. Every attempt to engage the creatures directly resulted in heavy losses and minimal damage to the enemy. Within 3 days, the scope of the disaster became clear. The aliens controlled the deep ocean and could launch attacks anywhere along the world's coastlines. They seemed to have unlimited numbers of biomechanical creatures, and their weapons were far superior to anything humans possessed. Most importantly, they could retreat to the deep ocean where human forces could not follow. An emergency meeting was called at the Pentagon, with military leaders from around the world participating by secure video link. Admiral Morrison presented his analysis of the alien capabilities to the assembled commanders. "These creatures are operating from bases in the deep ocean trenches," he explained, pointing to a map that showed attack patterns. "Every assault has come from deep water, and they retreat to depths that our surface ships cannot reach. Our conventional naval forces are designed to fight other surface ships, not creatures that can hide in the abyss." General Patricia Williams, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, studied the tactical reports with growing concern. "What are our options, Admiral? We cannot allow these aliens to control our coastlines." "Our surface fleet is effectively neutralized," Morrison admitted. "These creatures are too heavily armored for our conventional weapons, and they can attack from depths where we cannot pursue them. We need a different approach." The room fell silent as the military leaders considered their limited options. It was then that Captain Mike Stevens, who had been observing quietly from the back of the room, spoke up. Stevens was a veteran submarine commander with over 25 years of underwater operations experience. "Not all our ships fight on the surface, Admiral," he said calmly. The room turned to look at the submarine officer as the implications of his words sank in. Humanity's submarine fleet had been designed specifically for underwater combat. These vessels were built to operate in the deep ocean, equipped with sonar systems that could track targets in the darkest depths, and armed with weapons designed to strike from stealth. Morrison felt a surge of hope as he realized what Stevens was suggesting. "Captain, how many submarines do we have available for immediate deployment?" "The Pacific Fleet has 12 nuclear submarines ready for operations," Stevens replied. "The Atlantic Fleet has another 10. Plus we can coordinate with Allied submarine forces from Britain, France, and other nations." General Williams leaned forward with interest. "Are you suggesting we take this fight underwater?" "It's our only option," Stevens said firmly. "These aliens think they control the deep ocean, but they've never faced human submarine warfare. We've been perfecting underwater combat for over a century. It's time to show them that the depths belong to us." Morrison felt his confidence returning for the first time since the attacks began. "Get me every submarine commander available," he ordered. "It's time to take this fight underwater." The USS Virginia descended through the Pacific Ocean like a steel predator hunting in familiar territory. Commander Dan Walker had been operating submarines for 18 years, and he knew these waters better than most people knew their own neighborhoods. The nuclear-powered attack submarine moved at a depth of 800 feet, using the ocean's natural thermal layers to hide from enemy detection. Walker stood behind the sonar station where Petty Officer Bill Hayes monitored their surroundings with the skill of a master tracker. Hayes had spent 12 years listening to ocean sounds, learning to identify everything from whale songs to enemy engine signatures. His trained ears could detect threats that electronic systems might miss. "Contact bearing 210, Hayes whispered, adjusting his headphones. "Multiple targets, moving in formation at 3,000 feet depth." Walker moved to the sonar display and studied the green lines that represented underwater contacts. The alien convoy consisted of 6 large vessels moving in a straight line toward what intelligence reports indicated was a major supply depot. The creatures moved with the confidence of apex predators who believed they owned the deep ocean. "Range 2 targets," Walker asked quietly. 12,000 yards and closing," Hayes replied. "They're maintaining course and speed." "No indication. They've detected us." The aliens had made a critical mistake in their assessment of human capabilities. They assumed that surface-dwelling creatures would be helpless in the deep ocean environment. The Kethmore had evolved in their homeworld's crushing depths, where stealth was less important than brute strength and armor. They had never encountered an enemy that could strike silently from the shadows. Walker studied the tactical situation on his command display. The alien convoy was following a predictable route through an underwater valley, probably using the natural formation as a navigation aid. Their biomechanical sensors were focused downward toward the ocean floor, scanning for threats from below, rather than above. "Lieutenant Morrison, plot an intercept course," Walker ordered his navigation officer. "Use the thermal gradient at 600 feet to mask our approach." The ocean was not just empty water, but a complex three-dimensional environment with invisible highways and hiding places. Temperature differences between water layers created acoustic shadows where submarines could travel undetected. Ocean currents carried different sounds and smells that could mask or reveal a vessel's presence. Experienced submarine crews learned to read these conditions like a roadmap. The Virginia angled upward toward the thermal layer, a boundary between warm surface water and the cold depths below. This temperature difference bent sound waves in predictable ways, creating an acoustic blind spot that submarines could use for concealment. Walker had used this same technique dozens of times during training exercises and real combat missions. "Weapons, officer, prepare torpedo tubes 1 and 2. Walker commanded softly. Lieutenant Sarah Parker began the careful process of readying their Mark 48 torpedoes for launch. These weapons were the product of decades of underwater warfare development, designed specifically for attacking enemy submarines and surface ships. Each torpedo carried a 650-pound warhead and could track targets using both active sonar and wire guidance from the launching submarine. The Virginia ghosted closer to the alien convoy, using every stealth technique that human submarine crews had developed over a century of underwater warfare. The submarine's hull was covered with anechoic tiles that absorbed enemy sonar pings. Her reactor was cooled by natural circulation rather than noisy pumps. Even the crew moved quietly, communicating in whispers to avoid creating any sound that might betray their position. Hayes monitored the alien vessels as they continued their journey through the underwater valley. "They're still maintaining formation," he reported. "No change in course or speed. I don't think they know we're here." The aliens had superior technology in many ways, but they lacked the paranoid vigilance that human submarine crews had developed through decades of Cold War operations. Kethmori vessels moved like merchant ships in peacetime, confident that no threats existed in their domain. They had never learned to constantly scan for hidden enemies or to vary their routes to avoid ambush. "Range 4,000 yards, Hayes announced. "Targets are entering the optimal firing envelope." Walker waited for the perfect moment. The alien convoy was passing through the narrowest part of the underwater valley, with rocky walls on both sides that would limit their escape routes. The lead vessel was a massive creature ship that appeared to be heavily armed, probably serving as an escort for the supply vessels behind it. "Fire tube 1, Walker ordered. The torpedo launched with barely a whisper, expelled from the submarine by water pressure rather than explosive charges that might reveal their position. The Mark 48 immediately activated its guidance system and began tracking toward the lead alien vessel. Its wake was nearly invisible in the dark water. "Tube 1 away, running hot and straight," Parker reported. Walker waited exactly 30 seconds before giving his next order. "Fire tube 2. The second torpedo launched toward a different target in the convoy, ensuring maximum damage to the enemy formation. Both weapons streaked through the water at 50 knots. Their sophisticated guidance systems locked onto the alien vessel's unique acoustic signatures. The first torpedo struck the lead creature ship amidships, its warhead detonating with devastating effect. The explosion tore through the alien's organic armor, creating a massive hole that immediately began flooding with seawater. Bioluminescent fluid leaked from the wound like glowing blood, and the creature's agonized movements sent shockwaves through the water. The second torpedo found its target moments later, striking one of the supply vessels near the rear of the convoy. This creature was less heavily armored than the escort, and the explosion nearly severed it in half. The dying alien rolled over in the water, its biomechanical systems failing as vital fluids mixed with seawater. "Emergency deep," Walker commanded. Immediately after the impacts, the Virginia dove toward the ocean floor, using every technique in the submarine warfare handbook to disappear before the surviving aliens could locate their attacker. The submarine's ballast tanks flooded rapidly, and her planes angled downward as she sought the safety of deeper water. Above them, the remaining alien vessels frantically searched for their invisible enemy. Their biomechanical sensors swept the water in all directions, looking for any trace of the attack submarine. But the Virginia had already vanished into the thermal layers, hidden among the ocean's natural acoustic shadows, like a ghost returning to its haunted house. Similar attacks were occurring throughout the world's oceans as humanity's submarine fleet began their underwater guerrilla campaign. The aliens quickly discovered that their primitive enemies had mastered the art of silent warfare in ways they had never imagined possible. Commander Rachel Torres studied the tactical display aboard the USS Seawolf as her submarine moved silently through the Pacific abyssal plains. 3 nuclear attack submarines were converging on a target that intelligence had been tracking. 4 weeks, a massive Kethmori command vessel that had been coordinating alien attacks along the shipping routes between California and Hawaii. Torres had been commanding submarines for 14 years, but this mission represented something entirely new in naval warfare. She was leading humanity's first coordinated wolf pack attack against an alien enemy. The other 2 submarines in her group, the USS Connecticut and USS Jimmy Carter, were positioned at carefully calculated distances to create a triangle of death around their target. "Sonar contact bearing 270, reported Petty Officer Mark Davis from his station. Range approximately 8,000 yards. It's massive, Captain, much larger than the escort vessels we've encountered before. Torres moved to the sonar display and studied the acoustic signature. The alien command ship appeared to be over 400 feet long, with a complex organic structure that pulsed with bioluminescent activity. Multiple smaller vessels surrounded it in a protective formation, their biomechanical sensors scanning the water for threats. The Kethmori dreadnought moved through the deep ocean with the arrogance of a creature that had never faced a serious challenge. Its commander, Sub-Admiral Krexthar, believed that his forces controlled these waters. Absolutely. The massive vessel's organic armor could withstand tremendous pressure and conventional weapons, while its energy cannons could destroy any surface ship that dared to approach. What Krexthar did not understand was that humans had developed submarine warfare into an art form during decades of underwater conflict. The 3 American submarines stalking his vessel represented the culmination of over a century of experience in silent hunting beneath the waves. Communications signaled the other boats. Torres ordered quietly, "Prepare for coordinated attack. Pattern Alpha Strike." The encrypted message was transmitted through an underwater communication system that used extremely low-frequency waves. These signals could travel great distances underwater without being detected by alien sensors, allowing the human submarines to coordinate their movements like wolves, preparing to attack a large prey animal. Captain Robert Kim aboard the USS Connecticut received the signal and began positioning his submarine for the attack. His vessel would approach from the north, targeting the alien command ship's propulsion systems. Meanwhile, Captain Lisa Martinez, on the USS Jimmy Carter, moved into position from the south, preparing to strike the creature's command center. The alien escort vessels continued their patrol patterns, completely unaware of the deadly trap closing around them. Their biomechanical sensors were designed to detect other sea creatures and energy signatures. But human submarines used entirely different technology. The steel hulls covered with sound-absorbing materials were nearly invisible to alien detection. Systems. Torres watched as her sonar operator tracked the enemy formation. "They're maintaining course and speed," Davis reported. "No indication they've detected any of our boats." The alien command vessel was following a predictable route through an underwater canyon, probably using the natural formation for navigation. This gave the human submarines excellent positioning opportunities, as they could use the canyon walls to mask their approach and limit the enemy's escape routes. "All stations, prepare for attack," Torres announced to her crew. "Weapons, load. Tubes 1 through 4, with Mark 48 torpedoes. Set them for maximum spread pattern." Lieutenant Commander James Wilson began the process of preparing their weapons. Each Mark 48 torpedo had been modified based on intelligence gathered from previous encounters with alien vessels. The warheads were designed to penetrate organic armor, and the guidance systems had been programmed to target specific weak points in Kethmori ship design. The 3 submarines moved into their final attack positions with the precision of a ballet performance. Each captain had studied the other's capabilities and tactics through months of joint training exercises. They knew exactly when and where to strike for maximum effectiveness. "Range 6,000 yards, Davis announced. "All escorts are in formation around the primary target." Torres waited for the optimal moment when all 3 submarines would have clear shots at their assigned targets. The alien escorts were positioned to protect against attacks from ahead or behind, but they had not considered the possibility of simultaneous strikes from multiple directions. "All boats, this is Seawolf Actual," Torres transmitted. "Execute Alpha Strike on my mark. 3.2.1. Mark." The coordinated attack began with deadly precision. 12 torpedoes launched simultaneously from the 3 submarines, their paths calculated to converge on the alien formation from different angles. The weapons streaked through the water like underwater missiles. their guidance systems locked onto the biomechanical signatures of their targets. The first torpedoes struck the escort vessels, their explosions lighting up the deep ocean like underwater fireworks. The alien creatures writhed in agony as human warheads tore through their organic armor, creating massive wounds that leaked glowing fluid into the surrounding water. But the main target was the command vessel itself. 6 torpedoes converged on the massive creature from 3 different directions, striking vital systems that human intelligence had identified as vulnerable points. The explosions sent shockwaves through the water that could be felt for miles, in every direction. Sub-Admiral Krekstar felt his command ship shudder as human weapons found their targets. The organic hull began to rupture, and critical biomechanical systems started failing throughout the vessel. Emergency alarms sounded as the creature's life support systems struggled to maintain pressure and atmosphere. "Where are they?" Krekstar demanded of his sensor operators. "How many enemy vessels?" The alien crew frantically searched their displays, but they could find no trace of their attackers. The human submarines had vanished back into the ocean's thermal layers immediately after launching their weapons, disappearing like ghosts returning to the shadows. Within minutes, similar reports were flooding into Kethmori command centers around the world. Submarine wolfpacks were striking alien formations with devastating effectiveness, then disappearing before the survivors could mount any counterattack. The humans were using tactics that the aliens had never encountered or imagined. "These surface dwellers fight like the deep-sea predators of our homeworld," reported one terrified alien officer. "They strike from the darkness and vanish before we can respond. They seem to know our waters better than we do." For the first time since arriving at Earth, the Kethmori were experiencing fear. The vast oceans they had claimed as their domain were becoming hunting grounds where death could strike without warning from invisible enemies who moved like spirits through the depths. Dr. Amy Richardson pushed her glasses up her nose as she examined the alien technology samples spread across the laboratory table aboard the submarine tender, Emery Esland. The marine engineer had been working for 72 hours straight, surviving on coffee and determination as she tried to understand how Kethmori technology functioned. The captured alien equipment had been recovered from destroyed vessels during the recent submarine attacks. Each piece was partially organic, combining living tissue with mechanical components in ways that human science had never attempted. The technology was beautiful in its complexity, but Richardson was looking for weaknesses rather than admiring alien engineering. Her team consisted of 12 specialists from various fields: marine biology, materials science, pressure dynamics, and weapons engineering. They had been assembled from research institutions around the world, brought together on this floating laboratory to find a way to defeat an enemy that seemed technologically superior in every way. "Look at this cellular structure," said Dr. Michael Torres, the team's biologist, pointing to a microscopic image on his computer screen. "These organisms have evolved to maintain perfect equilibrium with their surrounding water pressure. They're incredibly efficient, but also incredibly specialized." Richardson studied the image with growing excitement. The alien biomechanical systems were designed to operate at specific pressure levels found in the deep ocean trenches of their homeworld. Every component, from the smallest sensor to the largest structural element, had evolved to function optimally under constant, crushing pressure. "What happens if that pressure changes rapidly?" she asked, her mind racing with possibilities. Dr. Torres pulled up additional data from their experiments. "We tested that yesterday. When we subjected the samples to rapid pressure fluctuations, the cellular structures began to destabilize. The organisms couldn't adapt quickly enough to maintain their integrity. The implications were staggering." Richardson realized that the aliens' greatest strength, their adaptation to extreme deep-sea pressure, might also be their most critical vulnerability. The Kethmori had never encountered an environment where pressure changed rapidly, so their technology had no defenses against such conditions. "We need to test this on a larger scale," Richardson announced to her team. If we can create controlled pressure waves in the water around their installations, we might be able to destabilize their entire technological base. Within hours, Richardson was presenting her findings to a gathering of submarine commanders in the ship's main briefing room. The officers listened intently as she explained the scientific principles behind her discovery, using simple diagrams to illustrate complex concepts. Their entire technological base depends on specific pressure differentials, she explained, pointing to a chart showing alien cellular structures. They've evolved in deep trenches where pressure is constant. Rapid pressure changes destabilize their systems at the molecular level. Captain Steve Murphy of the USS Connecticut leaned forward with interest. Murphy had been fighting the aliens for weeks, watching his torpedoes barely scratch their organic armor. The possibility of a new weapon that could exploit a fundamental weakness was exactly what human forces needed. You're saying we can use the water pressure against them? Murphy asked. Exactly, Richardson replied enthusiastically. Modified depth charges detonated at precise depths can create pressure waves that cascade through their installations. It would be like bringing down a skyscraper by removing the foundation. The concept was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to penetrate the aliens' organic armor with conventional explosives, they would use the ocean itself as a weapon. Carefully timed detonations could create artificial pressure waves that would propagate through the water, destabilizing alien technology over vast areas. How quickly can we develop these weapons? Asked Commander Patricia Adams of the USS Los Angeles. My engineering team is already working on the modifications, Richardson explained. We can convert existing depth charges by adding precise timing mechanisms and adjusting the explosive yields. The first batch should be ready within 2 weeks. The submarine commanders exchanged glances, recognizing the potential of this new approach. They had been fighting a guerrilla war against an enemy that seemed invulnerable to their weapons. Now they had the possibility of striking at the very foundations of alien technology. 2 weeks later, the USS Jimmy Carter approached the Japan Trench under the command of Commander Ryan Foster. The specialized submarine had been chosen for this mission because of her advanced sensors and ability to deploy experimental weapons with precision. Foster had volunteered for the dangerous assignment, understanding that this test could determine the future of the war. The alien installation in the Japan Trench was one of the largest discovered so far. Intelligence reports indicated that it served as a major manufacturing center, producing the biomechanical creatures that had been attacking shipping lanes throughout the Pacific. The city sprawled across several square miles of the ocean floor, its bioluminescent towers reaching upward through the crushing darkness. Sonar contact confirmed, reported Chief Petty Officer David Kim from his station. The target installation is directly below us at depth 9,000 feet. Multiple structures visible on passive sensors. Foster studied the tactical display, noting the positions of alien patrol creatures swimming around the city's perimeter. The experimental depth charges had been programmed with specific detonation sequences, designed to create maximum pressure disruption throughout the target area. Weapons, prepare the experimental charges for deployment, Foster ordered quietly. Lieutenant Commander Jennifer Park began the careful process of preparing the modified depth charges. Each weapon had been precisely calibrated based on Dr. Richardson's calculations, designed to detonate at specific depths and intervals to create cascading pressure waves. Charges armed and ready for deployment, Park reported, all systems showing green across the board. Foster waited until his submarine was positioned directly over the center of the alien city. The success of this mission would depend on precise timing and placement of the weapons. Too early or too late, and the pressure waves would dissipate harmlessly. Too far off target, and the alien installations would survive to continue their operations. Deploy charges at designated coordinates, Foster commanded. The depth charges descended through the water in a carefully calculated pattern. their timing mechanisms counting down the seconds until detonation. Foster watched the tactical display as the weapons reached their programmed depths. Positioned throughout the water column above the alien city, the first explosion occurred at a depth of 3,000 feet, creating a massive pressure wave that propagated downward through the water. Seconds later, additional charges detonated at deeper levels, their shockwaves combining and amplifying as they reached the alien installations. The effect was immediate and devastating. The organic towers of the alien city began to shudder as their cellular structures failed under the artificial pressure changes. Bioluminescent patterns flickered and died as biomechanical systems lost their ability to maintain equilibrium with the surrounding water. Like dominoes falling in sequence, the alien structures collapsed one after another. The cascading pressure waves had destabilized the very foundations of their technology, causing a chain reaction that brought down the entire installation. Thousands of Kethmori were trapped in the ruins of their city, crushed by the depths they had thought would protect them. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood before the massive display screen in her underground command center at Norfolk Naval Base, watching 12 blinking dots that represented humanity's most advanced nuclear submarines positioned around the globe. Each dot marked a submarine commander preparing to strike at the heart of the alien invasion force that had terrorized Earth's oceans for months. The operation had taken weeks to plan and coordinate. Intelligence teams had identified every major Kethmori installation in the world's deepest ocean trenches, from the Mariana Trench in the Pacific to the Puerto Rico Trench in the Atlantic. Each alien city represented a critical node in the enemy's command structure, and destroying them simultaneously would cripple their ability to coordinate future attacks. Status report from all vessels. Sullivan commanded her communications officer. Lieutenant Anna Davis worked quickly at her console, coordinating secure communications with submarines spread across 5 different time zones. All boats report. Ready for Operation Deep Strike, Admiral. Weapons loaded and crews standing by for your signal. Sullivan checked the mission clock showing 0255 GMT. In 5 minutes, human forces would launch the largest coordinated submarine attack in naval history. The success of this operation could determine whether humanity would reclaim control of its oceans or face continued domination by an alien force in the Puerto Rico Trench. Commander Tom Bradley gripped the periscope handles aboard the USS Virginia as his submarine maintained position 3 miles above the massive alien city below. This was the same trench where he had first encountered the Kethmori months ago, fleeing in terror from creatures he did not understand. Now he had returned with the knowledge and weapons needed to strike back. Sonar contact confirmed, reported Petty Officer Williams from his station. Target installation covers approximately 4 square miles of the trench floor. Multiple tower structures, and what appears to be a central command complex. Bradley studied the tactical display, showing the alien city in detail. The Kethmori had built their settlement in the deepest part of the trench, probably believing that the crushing pressure would protect them from any surface-dwelling enemy. They had no way of knowing that human submarines routinely operated at these depths, using the pressure and darkness as allies rather than obstacles. Weapon status. Bradley asked his torpedo officer. All tubes loaded with modified pressure charges, Lieutenant Parker replied. Timing sequences programmed according to Dr. Richardson's specifications. We're ready to commence attack on your signal. Similar preparations were taking place aboard submarines positioned over alien cities around the world. In the Mariana Trench, the USS Seawolf prepared to attack the largest Kethmori installation ever discovered. Off the coast of Japan, the USS Connecticut targeted a major manufacturing facility that had been producing the biomechanical creatures used in coastal raids. The beauty of the coordinated attack was its timing. The aliens had established communication links between their various installations, allowing them to coordinate their operations across vast distances. By striking all major cities simultaneously, human forces would prevent the Kethmori from warning each other or mounting coordinated defenses. 2 minutes to attack commencement, announced Lieutenant Davis from the command center in the Kermadec Trench near New Zealand. Commander Lisa Reynolds aboard the USS Los Angeles watched the alien settlement through her periscope sensors. The Kethmori city glowed with bioluminescent activity as thousands of creatures went about their daily routines, completely unaware of the steel predator lurking in the darkness above them. Target acquisition complete, reported her weapons officer. All charges programmed for maximum structural damage to the installation's foundation systems. The modified depth charges represented the culmination of weeks of scientific research and weapons development. Each explosive device had been precisely calibrated to create specific pressure waves that would destabilize alien biomechanical technology. Unlike conventional weapons that tried to penetrate alien armor, these charges would use the ocean itself as a weapon. 1 minute to commence, Davis announced across all communication channels. Admiral Sullivan felt the weight of responsibility as she prepared to give the order that would either save humanity's control of the oceans or potentially provoke the aliens into even more devastating retaliation. Intelligence reports suggested that this coordinated strike would eliminate most of the Kethmori command structure. But there were no guarantees in warfare. 30 seconds, came the countdown. In the Peruchili Trench, the USS Jimmy Carter floated silently above an alien research facility that had been conducting experiments on captured human technology. Commander Foster watched the glowing structures below, knowing that this installation had been responsible for developing new weapons used against coastal cities. 10 seconds to attack commencement, Davis announced. Admiral Sullivan watched the mission clock count down the final seconds. At exactly 0300 GMT, she gave the order that would change the course of the war. All stations, weapons free. Execute Operation Deep Strike. The command was transmitted simultaneously to all 12 submarines using encrypted underwater communication systems. Across the world's oceans, human submarine crews began launching their coordinated assault against the alien occupation force. Commander Bradley was the first to fire, releasing 6 modified depth charges that descended toward the Puerto Rico Trench installation. Weapons away, he reported calmly. Charges proceeding to target depth. The depth charges fell through the water column in a carefully calculated pattern, their timing mechanisms counting down the seconds until detonation. When they exploded at precisely programmed depths, they created massive pressure waves that propagated through the water like underwater earthquakes. The effect on the alien city was immediate and catastrophic. The biomechanical structures that had taken months to grow began to shudder as their cellular foundations lost stability. Organic towers that had reached toward the surface started to collapse, their bioluminescent patterns flickering and dying as critical systems failed. Similar destruction was occurring simultaneously at alien installations around the globe. In the Mariana Trench, the largest Kethmori city was collapsing in on itself as pressure waves destabilized its massive support structures. The Japan Trench installation crumbled like a house of cards as its biomechanical foundations liquefied under artificial pressure changes. Within minutes, months of alien construction had been reduced to rubble, scattered across the ocean floor. Thousands of Kethmori found themselves trapped in the ruins of their cities, crushed by the very depths they had believed would serve as their sanctuary. The creatures that had once ruled Earth's oceans now faced extinction in the abyss they had claimed as their domain. The USS Triton moved through the Challenger deep, like a steel shark, following the scent of wounded prey. Commander Chris Park had been tracking the surviving Kethmori forces for 3 days, watching as the once mighty alien fleet scattered into smaller groups, desperately seeking sanctuary in Earth's deepest waters. Park stood behind the sonar station where Petty Officer Kelly Martinez monitored the fleeing aliens with the patience of an experienced hunter. Martinez had spent 15 years listening to ocean sounds, learning to identify everything from migrating whales to enemy submarines by their acoustic signatures. Now she was tracking creatures that no human had imagined possible just months ago. "Contact bearing 090, Martinez whispered, adjusting her headphones. 3 vessels moving in formation, toward the thermal vent field. They're trying to use the hot water discharge to mask their engine noise." Park studied the sonar display, showing the alien vessels as they approached the underwater volcanic vents that dotted the deepest part of the ocean trench. The thermal vents created columns of superheated water that rose thousands of feet from the ocean floor, carrying minerals and creating acoustic interference that could confuse sonar systems. The aliens had learned some lessons during their months of warfare with human submarines. They were no longer moving in predictable patterns or following straight-line courses. Instead, they were trying to use the ocean's natural features to hide from their pursuers, much like human submarine crews had done for decades. But what the Kethmori did not understand was that human submariners had been using these same hiding places for generations. Every thermal vent, every underwater canyon, every acoustic shadow had been mapped and studied by human oceanographers and naval officers. The aliens were trying to hide in humanity's backyard. They think the thermal interference will protect them, Park said with a cold smile. Plot an intercept course through the southern approach. We'll use the temperature gradient to mask our approach. Lieutenant Sarah Collins began calculating the submarine's route through the complex underwater terrain. The Challenger Deep was like an underwater mountain range turned upside down, with peaks and valleys that created a 3-dimensional maze. Collins had studied these charts for years, memorizing every detail of the deepest place on Earth. The Triton descended deeper into the trench, using the natural temperature layers to hide from alien sensors. The submarine's hull groaned slightly as it passed the 7-mile depth mark, entering regions where only the most advanced human vessels could operate. For the aliens, this was supposed to be their safest refuge. For Park and his crew, it was just another hunting ground. Sonar contact confirmed, Martinez reported. 3 alien vessels holding position near Thermal Vent Cluster 7. They appear to be attempting repairs or regrouping. Through the ocean, other human submarines were conducting similar hunts. The surviving Kethmori forces had split in 2 small groups after the destruction of their major cities, hoping that dispersal would increase their chances of survival. Instead, it had made them easier prey for submarine crews who specialized in tracking individual targets. In the Puerto Rico Trench, the USS Virginia was pursuing 2 alien supply ships that had been attempting to establish a new base in a underwater cave system. Commander Bradley knew every cave and crevice in these waters from years of training exercises and research missions. The aliens might hide for hours, or even days, but eventually they would have to emerge to search for food or communicate with other survivors. "Weapons officer, prepare torpedo tubes 1 and 2, Park ordered as his submarine approached the thermal vent field. "Load with standard warheads. We want to make sure they don't escape this time." The Kethmori vessels had positioned themselves among the thermal vents, hoping that the hot water and mineral deposits would interfere with human sonar. But Martinez could still track them using passive acoustic sensors that detected the subtle vibrations of their biomechanical propulsion systems. "Range 4,000 yards, Martinez announced. "They're still holding position. No indication they've detected our approach." The alien crews were exhausted and demoralized after weeks of constant pursuit. Subcommander Korthok, the highest survivor of the Puerto Rico installation, had been trying to coordinate the scattered remnants of his forces using encrypted bioacoustic communications. But every attempt to regroup had been met by silent attacks from human submarines that seemed to appear from nowhere. "How do they find us so easily?" demanded Navigation Officer Velcora from her station aboard the damaged alien vessel. "We use every stealth technique known to our people," Yet these humans track us like they can see through the water itself. Korthak studied the tactical display, showing human submarine positions around the globe. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Wherever Kethmori survivors attempted to hide, human hunters appeared within hours. It was as if the enemy possessed supernatural knowledge of ocean conditions and terrain. The answer was actually quite simple, though the aliens could not comprehend it. Human beings had been exploring, mapping, and fighting in Earth's oceans for centuries. Every submarine crew trained extensively in ocean geography, studying currents, temperatures, and acoustic conditions until they knew the underwater terrain better than most people knew city streets. Firetube 1, Park commanded, as his submarine reached optimal firing position. The torpedoes streaked through the water toward the lead alien vessel. Its guidance system locked onto the creature's biomechanical signature. The explosion lit up the thermal vent field like an underwater volcano, and the wounded alien ship began leaking glowing fluids that attracted other predators from the deep ocean. The remaining 2 vessels attempted to flee deeper into the vent field, but Park had anticipated their escape route. The Triton was already positioned to intercept them, having used detailed maps of the underwater terrain to predict exactly where the aliens would run. Second target acquired, reported the weapons officer, firing tube 2. Within minutes, all 3 alien vessels had been destroyed or disabled. The survivors faced a choice between certain death in the crushing depths or surrender to an enemy that had proven superior in every aspect of underwater warfare. Similar scenes were playing out throughout the world's oceans as human submarine crews systematically eliminated the scattered remnants of the alien invasion force. The vast waters that the Kethmori had claimed as their domain had become a trap from which there was no escape. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly under the morning sun as Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the deck of the USS Missouri, watching history unfold in the waters where his grandfather had witnessed the end of World War II. 3 months after the alien invasion began, the same battleship that had seen Japan's surrender in 1945 was about to witness humanity's victory over Earth's first extraterrestrial enemy. Subcommander Korthak's message had arrived through underwater communication channels at dawn. The highest-ranking surviving Kethmori officer had requested permission to approach the surface for formal surrender negotiations. After weeks of systematic elimination of their scattered forces, the aliens finally accepted what human submarine crews had proven beyond doubt. The depths belonged to humanity. Morrison studied the translation of the alien message displayed on his tablet. The words were simple, but carried the weight of complete defeat. We acknowledge human dominance of these waters. We underestimated your mastery of the deep ocean environment. We request terms for the withdrawal of our remaining forces from your world. Captain Rachel Torres climbed the ladder from her submarine's hatch, emerging onto the deck of the Missouri, where she would serve as humanity's primary representative for the surrender ceremony. Her expertise in underwater warfare and personal experience fighting the aliens made her the natural choice to negotiate with an enemy that had learned to fear human submarines above all else. Any word on their remaining numbers? Morrison asked as Torres approached. Intelligence estimates fewer than 2,000 survivors scattered across the deep ocean, Torres replied, checking her briefing notes. Most are hiding in the deepest trenches, too afraid to move because they know our submarines are hunting them. The irony was not lost on either officer. The aliens had chosen Earth specifically because of its vast oceans, believing that their deep-sea evolution gave them an insurmountable advantage over surface-dwelling humans. They had dismissed humanity as primitive creatures, afraid of the deep water, incapable of challenging alien dominance in the abyss. What the Kethmori had failed to understand was that humans had been exploring and mastering Earth's oceans for centuries. Every submarine crew member trained extensively in underwater navigation, acoustic warfare, and deep-sea survival. They knew ocean currents, thermal layers, and pressure dynamics better than the aliens knew their own homeworld seas. "Contact on sonar," announced the Missouri's communications officer. "Single alien vessel approaching from the southwest, depth 100 feet. Through the clear Pacific water, the alien surrender vessel became visible as it rose toward the surface. The creature ship was smaller than the massive dreadnoughts that had terrorized coastal cities months earlier, but it still moved with the fluid grace that characterized Kethmori. Biomechanical technology. Sub-Commander Korthok emerged from the organic vessel's opening, his pale blue skin glistening in the sunlight. The alien officer moved awkwardly in the surface environment, clearly uncomfortable outside the crushing depths where his people had evolved. 2 aide officers accompanied him, their large black eyes scanning the human naval formation with obvious fear. "Welcome aboard," Torres said formally, as the aliens were escorted onto the battleship's deck. "I am Captain Torres, representing Earth's submarine forces." Korthok studied the human officer with curiosity and respect. During the months of warfare, he had developed a grudging admiration for the enemy commanders who had outfought his technologically superior forces through superior knowledge and tactics. "Captain Torres," the alien said through his translation device, "your reputation precedes you. Our survivors speak of you as the ghost of the deep places, one who strikes without warning and vanishes like a spirit." The formal surrender ceremony took place in the battleship's main conference room, with representatives from multiple nations observing via secure video link. Korthok presented the terms that his people were willing to accept: complete withdrawal from Earth's oceans, return of all captured human technology, and a promise never to return to this solar system. "Why did you choose to surrender now?" Torres asked during the negotiations. "Your people still have advanced technology and could continue fighting from the deepest trenches." Korthak's expression showed something that might have been sadness or resignation. "Because we finally understand what we face," he replied. "We thought your oceans were empty territory that we could claim without opposition. We believed that surface dwellers would be helpless in the deep waters." The alien commander gestured toward the window where human submarines could be seen patrolling the horizon. "But you have shown us that every cubic meter of these waters belongs to you. Your submarine crews know currents we have never mapped, hide in thermal layers we cannot detect, and move through the depths like they were born there." Torres nodded, understanding the alien's realization. "We have been exploring these oceans for hundreds of years. Every submarine officer studies oceanography, navigation, and underwater warfare as if their life depends on it, because it does." "Exactly," Korthok agreed. "We saw empty water, where you had already established mastery through knowledge and experience. We tried to conquer a domain that you had already claimed through expertise rather than force." The surrender document was signed using both human technology and alien biomechanical systems, ensuring that the agreement would be binding under both species' understanding of formal treaties. Korthak's bioluminescent signature pulsed with patterns that indicated complete acceptance of defeat. Within hours, alien vessels began rising from the deepest ocean trenches around the world. The surviving Kethmori forces gathered at designated coordinates where human submarines escorted them to the surface for departure. Each alien ship was inspected to ensure they carried no human captives or stolen technology. Captain Torres stood on the sail of her submarine as it surfaced in San Francisco Bay, watching the last alien ships disappear into the afternoon sky. The Golden Gate Bridge, damaged but still standing after the initial alien attacks, framed the departing vessels as they climbed toward the stars. "The ocean remembers everything," she said quietly to her crew gathered on deck. "Every ship that has sailed these waters, every submarine that has dived these depths, every sailor who has learned to read the currents and winds. The aliens thought they could take our oceans, but they never understood that we had already made them ours. Around the world, Submarine crews were surfacing to celebrate their victory. These sailors, who usually operated in secrecy beneath the waves, had emerged as humanity's unlikely heroes. Their specialized knowledge of underwater warfare had transformed Earth's greatest vulnerability into its most formidable defense. The war had lasted only 3 months, but it had changed everything. Humanity now knew they were not alone in the universe, and they had proven that superior technology could be defeated by superior knowledge of the battlefield. The same oceans that had seemed to make Earth vulnerable to alien invasion had ultimately provided the means for victory. As the alien ships disappeared into the cosmos, Earth's oceans returned to their rightful guardians, the silent service that had always called the depths home, and always would.